we saw a massive inefficiency in the ecosystem around small business lending. Banks don't actually serve Main Street small businesses. They don't know where to go. They don't know what they qualify for. But that's not really understanding that there's a problem to be solved really isn't the most important part of building a great company. It's how do you enroll an organization to solve these problems on an ongoing, everyday basis. As a founder of a company, you can't do it all yourself. So it really is about the team. I always use the phrase that building a company is a team sport. But the most effective teams, they just got to work together really effectively. And that's really where core values come into play.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
What are the core factors of driving growth? Yes, you've got to have sales. You've got to have marketing effectiveness. You've got to have customer service, operations, product development. You've got to make a difference. But what are the underlying factors of that growth? When you think about your job as a leader, how you drive growth is really an important piece to this. And you've got to get the foundational elements right. I've been working with hundreds of thousands of companies and leaders, and this, I know over the years, is the foundations are what work. There's some fancy tricks out there. Maybe you can learn something and pull out of one or two books that you've read and then recently, but the foundations are what work. Specifically, mission, vision, and values. If you get those things right in your organization, a lot of the other things will take care of themselves. The problem is, most people think that those are soft. They aren't really specific enough to really drive growth. So they focus on the metrics of growth. I don't want to go too far off on a rant, but I really believe that mission, vision, and values are important, and it's how you drive growth. Today, we're going to talk about one piece of that plan, and that's the values. Your core values are so critical to how people relate to each other, how they approach the work, and how they get work done. Your core values are so important to your people and the business about how you relate to each other and how you get work done that you can't ignore the effectiveness of this when you do it right. Today, we're talking with the CEO of NAV. They're a small business that helps businesses really understand how to get money matching lenders and borrowers. Today's guest is Greg Ott. He's the CEO of NAV. NAV is a company that is a marketplace, if you will, between matching borrowers and lenders. We don't talk much about this, but in today's world of PPP, getting money for your business and understanding cash flow, really important. And things have changed and they're different than they were about 6 months ago. When you think about your business, you want to make sure you have the right leadership in place, but also you want to think about having the right focus of core values. You've got to have all of these things working together, and core values allow your people to make decisions where you're not in the room. One of the things I really love about this interview is some of the details he shares about how they use it for employee recognition and how people stay on track together and how they shout out each other and allow how that really affects the growth of the company. Now, without further ado, here's an interview with Greg. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to remind you that you can actually get a tool that I've been working with clients with for the last couple of years. I've refined this tool that's gone through several iterations. Now we have it completely automated. You can actually go online and fill out the leadership quiz. To get the leadership quiz, just go to theleadershipquiz.com. That's pretty easy, right? Theleadershipquiz.com. What you will get when you do that is you will answer a few questions. You will see where you rate based on the core principles of fast growth companies. If you're ready to grow your company or you want to see where you are, then make sure you go to theleadershipquiz.com. Inside it, you will get insight to where you are, understand where you want to improve, and you will get them mapped into the 10 areas that are most specific to fast growth companies. Again, go to theleadershipquiz.com and you can get that right now. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Hey, Gene. Great to have you today.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. Grow Think Tank is all for leaders that are really creating culture and leadership that allows companies to grow fast.
Sounds like a great topic.
Well, I know that you have been inside this for years now. I would love for you to tell us what NAV is, just so we have context.
Sure. Easily put, NAVS connects small business borrowers with lenders. So we're an online platform that helps small business owners understand what they're qualified for before they apply, and then connects them to the best lenders for their situation. Call it a little bit of a comparison shopping engine for small business loans.
Love that. I think a lot of small businesses out there have been looking at cash flow, especially through the PPPs, and I noticed it was on your homepage.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've facilitated well over 10,000 small businesses to get their PPP loans. It's a critical program. It's got its flaws, especially in the rollout, but at least it's a little bit of a lifeline for some small business owners.
Well, I know that there's probably a lot of questions the audience would want to know about this PPP, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
Another time.
Greg, my team and I have been doing some research on the company about why you've grown so fast. Just some of the top numbers: over 10 million in revenue in 2019, 114 employees, 623rd on the Inc. list. Those are about right?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to keep all of them going up from there.
And they keep growing. When we were looking at why you grew so fast, you were able to identify that it really was about the core values. Tell us why core values are so important to the company.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of business visionaries can see problems that need to get solved. And we saw a massive inefficiency in the ecosystem around small business lending. Banks don't actually serve Main Street small businesses. They don't know where to go. They don't know what they qualify for. But that's not really understanding that there's a problem to be solved really isn't the most important part of building a great company. It's how do you enroll an organization to solve these problems on an ongoing, everyday basis. As a founder of a company, you can't do it all yourself. So it really is about the team. I always use the phrase that building a company is a team sport. But the most effective teams have just got to work together really effectively. And that's really where core values come into play. It helps align the why we do what we do with how we're going to do the work, and very importantly, how we're going to work together. The bigger the team, the more points of view you have, the more opportunity there is for people to disagree. And I think core values are the most powerful tool for people being comfortable and even psychologically safe. We talked about psychological safety. People being comfortable disagreeing and realize we're all here though for the right reasons. At the end of the day, we're all going to treat each other well.
Hold on for a second. Greg just talked about business being a team sport. Do you feel like your team is completely aligned together? Are they truly working together as a team? Well, if you're not, then you can't blame anybody but yourself. It'd be really easy for you to want to blame them. When would they be more mature? When would they really get their act together? I'm here to tell you that your job as a leader is to have the kind of conversations that allow people to align at a deeper level, not just at the surface, but truly be connected to the mission and to what's going on inside the organization, how you work together, how you communicate, how you think. All of those things are important, and it drives the cues from leadership. My job here is not to be your friend, but to be direct enough where you really understand that blaming others is a crutch, that you have to take responsibility or ownership, if you will, of the team sport aspect of people playing together as a team. Back to the interview. The sense of psychological safety, that's a big study out of Google. I know you went to Stanford and got a mechanical engineering degree. Did you read much about that Aristotle study?
I did. That was fascinating. Very influential to me as well. And I apply some of those principles directly. In fact, when we do our, I bring together the executive team at least every 6 weeks. And I do a little bit of intersection from some of the books by Patrick Lencioni.
Yep.
And that Google study. And we always start out every meeting with, how are we feeling about psychological safety? Because if the executive team can be psychologically safe, well, then at least we can cascade it from there.
I have a study where I include that as a part of it. And I know one of the answers is, what does safety have to do with business and leadership? And that's the opposite end of the spectrum of it actually is something that unites us together and we feel safe. That Aristotle study, one of the key things that came out of it, I actually interviewed the manager at Google that was mentioned in that study, one of the mentions. And he was talking about how do you use that in one-on-one meetings? When you think about the sense of psychological safety, how does that fit into the core values that you've defined for the company?
So we have 5 core values. They make up an acronym called RULIO, RULIO. And we'll go through the rest of them there, but it really is about one of our values, the I is about indivisible. I think psychological safety really fits into being indivisible, and respecting people is a core aspect of that, which means that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to ask for help. But at the end of the day, we're all indivisible. We're all on one team.
I actually love the fact that some of your values are very clear, like they're relentless. They're actually behind you. I guess you know that, and ownership. But then you have some others that are just a little bit like unruly. Like some people go, well, why is that a part of the values?
Yeah, unruly is fun because it's really about never settling for the status quo. And what I call it a healthy dissatisfaction. And, there's got to be a sense of like, yeah, I solved the problem. I launched the product. I pushed out the campaign. But always challenge yourself a little bit like, what could I have done better? And how, is what we have good enough, and never quite feeling like it's good enough. So unruly is a little bit of being unsettled and never accepting the status quo.
I do a lot of analysis of the rituals of companies, what we do over and over again. And values is a big part of that. Is there anything that you can shed a light on of what you do with the values consistently, day in and day out, whether start of meetings or, some kind of rhythm that you have that has worked for you?
Yeah, we really try to incorporate them into the daily operational flow of the company. And one of the things we do is we spend time on employee recognition, and we have shout outs, we have a Slack channel, and then in our all hands, which unfortunately during the crisis, we're doing all hands via Zoom now, which are a whole separate topic. They're actually a blast and they're fantastic in terms of creating connective tissue. But prior to that, we would bring, it was a bit of a contest for people to shout out their colleagues. And then we would choose the best shout outs and make it t-shirts. And t-shirts would have one of the values on. So every shout out to an employee is about one or more of the values that they represented through their action. That they really helped me through this, or they did just some great work on fixing these bugs, and that was totally legitified. Or they were relentless and worked until 1 in.the morning to solve this for a customer. And so they get a T-shirt that actually says the word relentless on it, or the word legitified. We just try and reinforce that over and over through the daily process of the company.
Hold on for a second. Greg just talked about shout outs in Slack. Do you know what that is? Well, one of the things I've seen that really works well if you want to align people together is to have peer-to-peer recognition. A shout out is just a chance for people to recognize what others are doing, how they're supporting themselves as teams, how they're pitching in, going above and beyond, showing a sense of loyalty that is not normal inside the organization. Those shout outs by their peers really can create more alignment and reinforce what you want more of. If you use it around the core values, you get double duty there because you're operationalizing the values and you're giving recognition at the same time. A shout out, whether you use Slack or use any other channel, is a great way to bind people together. Back to the interview. I've always thought there's a huge value, Greg, to having peers recognize peers for things like values that you really want to make a part of the day-to-day. And this shout out is something that you've seen do that. What's the impact specifically you've seen peer-to-peer wise of people holding people true to the values or calling out when they're not being true?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It goes both ways, right? And you see we also reward the people who give praise And you start to see there's people who take pride in being one of the recognizers of other people. I have a personal phrase I use when I'm recruiting that I just look for is hungry, humble, and smart. And that doesn't coincidentally just happens not necessarily to be the same as our values, but I look for humility. I look for humility in leaders. And so part of what's nice about this shout out is you don't have to toot your own horn, that we recognize the people who spend time tooting the horn on behalf of other people. And then it becomes a bit of a self-managing platform is when people aren't operating within those values. You don't need to have a manager or an executive get involved or HR get involved, right? The organism starts to self-correct. They point out that, hey man, that wasn't cool what you did, or, hey, we're all working late, why can't you? And so it helps reinforce, even correct some of the bad behaviors.
I've seen those things work across many organizations. You have put a lot of focus on values. Does this come from someplace, or is it just something that you wanted to create when you got into a real leadership role?
Yeah, I think, I've had the fortune of working for a lot of different size companies. I've worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies. I've done 3 startups. And I just said, what gets you energized on that Monday morning? There's nothing like the Sunday night dread. There's a name for it, of like, oh crap, I got to go to work tomorrow, right? And I said, what were the best experiences I've had? And how do I just build a company around that? And so much of it wasn't about what is the nature of the work you have to do. It's what's the environment you work in, and that's the people and the way things get done. I've been in companies where it was all highly pedigreed, big titled people, and it's extremely competitive and cutthroat. And that was just what you signed up for. It was an up or out system, and I'm competitive by nature, and so I did well and I thrived in that. But I just realized how many people don't thrive in that. Where people really thrive is when they do their best work around equally talented and equally motivated people. And so what attracted me to move from, I was with a large company, I was with Intuit prior to this, and I was attracted to get back to a startup because I just wanted to build the type of company I've always wanted to work for. And you can only really do that when you start small. You've got to put the values in place early.
I want to put the rest of our focus here on the value you have at the end down there, ownership. Where did it come for you, and why did it have to be a part of these values?
Yeah, I think if there's 2, it's individual and ownership. And ownership is so much about, you can wrap so many of the other ones in there. It's about taking pride in your work. It's about never settling. It's about realizing that building a company is a team sport. And all those things come together, but then recognizing that the end benefit of it is for yourself. And I think one of the interesting things in terms of values-driven companies is a lot of them can get on the track of being almost more like a nonprofit, right? Where you have to somehow find that intersection of, we've got to be a profitable company, we've got to continue to grow and have growth aspirations, and at the same time have this value of doing things right and treating each other well. And so ownership kind of is to me the value that starts to bridge the 2. Because I want people who want to win. I want people who want NAV to have a wildly successful IPO at some point in the future, and to reap the benefits of that. So they need to feel connected to the rewards of the company's growth as much as feeling connected to the way we operate. And reinforcing ownership is really part of that. So we do that through not only through values, but through equity, through transparency on the company performance. We share the financials, we share the good, the bad. I'm trying to be transparent and vulnerable as a leader, so that it is part of them feeling ownership. I tell them, look, I need your help. You guys are owners of the company. I need your ownership to help me, because I'm trying to figure out, should we go this way or should we go that way? And being able to share that to the company is really recognizing them as owners.
I know some people understand that ownership thing, because I think you can take something really too far. You can care too much. It's really dangerous when you care about the work more than your people do. It's really important when you don't have people taking a negative view of that word ownership. Sometimes ownership creates silos. And it really is, it takes it away from that team effect that you've been talking about. What are you doing to make sure that it's taken in the right way, and so that people understand that it really is a team effort, but they're individually coming in with ownership instead of trying to blame others?
Yeah, I think it is tough. It is. I have a mantra. I say no canoes. As a company, we're one big ship. It's not a series of adjacent canoes. And so just trying to reinforce that we can't fall into these ruts of silos. One of the common ruts that I think a lot of companies fall into is departments. And these silos I think there's a human nature almost toward gravitating towards tribes. I'm in this tribe, and so you're the other tribe. And so I just talk about that openly. Let's not be in canoes. Let's not form tribes. A lot of tribes become, I'm in this department. I'm in the marketing department and you're not. Or I'm in the engineering department and you're not. Organizationally, we have a pretty, somewhat of a deliberate approach to having a matrix structure where there are engineers who work ultimately towards the head of marketing. And there are marketers who work for a salesperson. And trying to help people realize that that's about us really thinking about and operating like a team. Adjacent from the work side, we also just want people to get to know each other. So we have a lot of activities, clubs, games, at lunchtime in a normal in-office environment. There's board games all over the place. And we try and encourage that. We try and encourage social activity, really pushing across those traditional functional boundaries so people don't think about, all that happens is I win, so I win. They think about we win and how am I contributing to that, because I actually like the person I'm working with.
Well, I want to switch gears one final time, Greg. You've really, opened our eyes a little bit about values in the company, but your own journey as a leader, you've probably had defining moments where you've had to let go of a previous version of yourself. You've had to let go of maybe some of the day-to-day. Can you think about that and share one area where you really had to let go to be able to elevate or expand to the next level?
Yeah, I think, on the journey, there's a point there where you just start to realize and get comfortable with not everybody's going to be like you. And people can see the exact same thing, but have a different interpretation of it. And people can be driven and can be very hungry, but that doesn't mean they're going to process things the way I process them. So I was pretty competitive and really driven, and I just wanted everyone to be driven like that. I wanted people to be data driven. I wanted people to be able to articulate clearly certain things about their strategies and their visions. And I think as I matured as a leader, it was much more about accepting people in the organization for both their strength and their flaws. And sometimes the flaws, what my prior self would have seen as a flaw, is really an opportunity to complement somebody with another skill set, another person. And so I think that was part of my journey in growing as a leader, is really just, how do you recognize the best in people, not just focus on what you don't like about them.
Beautifully said. Greg, thanks for sharing your journey here on Growth Think Tank and sharing the wisdom about creating teams and cultures that want to grow fast. And it's been a pleasure.
Gene, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Another great interview here on the podcast. I really am empowered to know that I'm working with people who believe in putting people first, developing those employees, and having the right foundational elements that allow that to happen. Your core values is how you drive growth. Believe it or not, I believe it's one of the most critical elements to something simple that you can do day in and day out that allow people to align together, optimize their work. Now, I want to remind you that when you're looking at your journey of leadership, you don't have to do it alone. You can actually lean on others. You may have a peer network that you can lean on to. Maybe you have a board of directors, or maybe you just need someone to listen to you. One of the things I love to do as a coach is just listen to my clients Help them understand what they can't see for themselves. Maybe ask pointed questions that allow them to challenge their beliefs. Those beliefs allow them to excel their own growth, expand as a leader, and activate their team in a new way. Why am I telling you this? Is because I love what I do. I love being that sounding board, that guidance, allowing my clients to get really clear about where they're going and how they're going to get there. Maybe shifting their confidence, shifting their focus just a little bit so that they know how to move forward. Sometimes it's the smallest changes that we find make the most difference. My job is to help you as a leader grow and expand. If I can do anything to help you do that, make sure you reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. That's my email address. I'd love to connect with you. Maybe it's just to ask you a few questions, get to know you. If you're listening in right now and you've gone this far, maybe you've listened to several episodes, then maybe it's time to reach out. Gene@genehammett.com. As always, leave with courage. We'll see you next time.